presentation for Dave, maybe we could start with that if you wouldn't object. And then there's Dave. Oh,
Hello?
here it is. Here it is.
Okay.
You can see it anyway.
Well,
Oh.
I'll go ahead and speak over the video, and you can just watch the video in the background as it plays here. This is a skid steer, is what it's called, Ray and Debbie. It's known by a lot of different names. Bobcat is kind of one of the, familiar names of what it. Oh, where'd it go? There we go. So this is showing the multiple things that it can do, and in this case here, what it has is a mower. That big flat piece of metal there on the front there is a giant mower that is just mowing. These are branches of a tree that are anywhere up to 8 inches in diameter, and it can just mulch them up like into just tiny little leaves, and you can see the mulch is being left there right on the ground. So as an example, using this attachment alone, this thing is going to disassemble this whole tree in about 3 or 4 minutes. That would take our 2-man crew, when they do it now currently by hand, that would take them about 45 minutes to an hour to cut all those branches down, then feed all those branches into the chipper machine, and then sweep up all the mess and stuff afterwards and everything else like that. And you're going to see this thing just totally take this tree down in literally a couple of minutes. It has other multiple attachments too that you can buy for this. It could have a grinder if you wanted to take striping off of a pavement. It can have a sweeper attachment if you want to sweep the streets for mud and debris and things like that. It can have a backhoe attachment so we can clean out the silt out of drains or things like that. So you can buy any sort of attachment that you like to go onto this machine, but it's a very versatile machine that can be kind of like 4, 5, 6 machines in one. It actually has, up to, dozens and dozens of attachments, but we'd probably use 3 or 4 for the type of work that we do,
Okay.
Its cost is in the neighborhood of about 60,000 or so brand new, but they have used ones that only have, a couple hundred hours on them for as little as like $30,000 to $40,000 and stuff like that. And like, as Jim was saying earlier, what it does is it just makes our crew so much more efficient in what they're doing. Right now, if we take out a chipper machine and this and that, we've got 2 people kind of involved in that. This is almost a single person operation in a lot of cases. And so anyway, that gives you kind of the idea. And hey, or Debbie, I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Sure. Can you give us an example of what the cost is for some of these attachments that might be applicable to us?
Yeah, they're in the range of $4,000 to $8,000, like for an attachment, kind of a thing. So you could get 2 or 3 attachments, let's say, that we would use the most to start with. The chipper, brand new, all the 2 or 3 attachments that we'd use, the tax, the delivery, everything, get it out the door and everything, out to the community and one brand new piece for everything for probably, $80,000 to $90,000 total. If you get one that's used, you can knock off probably about $20,000 to $25,000 off that price and get it more in the $60,000 to $65,000 type range, maybe, so they give you kind of a ballpark.
Okay.
They would be able to use these like our intersections that you've got signs on each corner and all that. Would they be able to use this? Would it be practical to do the trimming with this piece of equipment though? Or would you still have to do it with the guy
Well,
with the
well, if you've got a branch or something that's, kind of like, within a couple of feet of a stop sign, let's say, as an example, that, is kind of, that's something we just take our saw and lop off, one branch and then we're good, kind of thing like that. This is more for when you're going down the road and you see kind of like a whole row of trees or something that you can, you know, right now they might be at the edge of the pavement or encroaching a little bit into the pavement, and you could just mow this thing back, you know, 6 feet and into the shoulder and create a brand new shoulder again and stuff like that. And so you could take out a lot at once, you know. And if we did this with a contractor, Debbie and Ray, just to give you an idea, we paid the contractor about $23,000, I'm sorry, last year, just to trim about 8 or so streets that we had. We went and did the trimming along about 8 different streets or so, like that. So this would save us that kind of a stuff, you know, that we're doing, that we're farming that out. We could do that all in-house, and this payback on this type of machine would be really quick, you know.
Okay.
How often would you use it?
Well, I think we'd use it for about, you know, a month or two solid, you know, I mean, throughout that period, every year, you know, because it's you can always push those sumacs and the other trees that grow pretty fast back farther, you know, from the shoulders and stuff like that. We just don't attack them all as time doesn't necessarily permit it, but we'd have the time to attack them all now.
Now, does this go 16 feet high by chance? Because that's our
Yeah. You know, that I don't know what the exact height would be over that cat. The cat itself is about 7 or 8 feet, and that arm probably raises up another, you know, 6 to 8 feet so easily. So I'm sure we're probably up at 12 or 14 feet. But you know, that's something we can look into, you know.
Well, I see also that it has tracks rather than tires, like a tank. Can that be used on our asphalt roads?
That's the thing that we would do is we would get a trailer to trailer it around. A trailer's maybe like around $8,000, and you hook it onto a trailer, and then you can take the trailer to wherever you need to. The tracks allow it to go up and down slopes. So when we're getting into the drains, as an example, trying to clean out the silt of the drains and take some of the brush out of there, then that's when those tracks are really valuable for us, because it can keep traction in those terrain areas that are tough.
Were those tracks rubber or were they metal?
I don't know on that one. I think you probably could get both.
Yeah, because that one looked kind of like it was rubber, hard rubber, not
Yeah.
metal
Yeah.
one.
But would it, if we put it perpendicular to the road, so the road is going this way, and we're working this way, and it's backing up onto our pavement, are those tracks going to tear up our pavement?
No, I don't think so. I don't. I'll double check on that to make sure, but I don't think so. I think it's just designed to distribute the weight, you know, with the tracks, so that you don't have that situation where it's going to be, you know, like crushing the edges or something like that, you know.
Right, that would be my concern. Okay.
Yeah, mine too.
So you used this once, right? Didn't you rent one?
Yeah, we've actually used it twice. We've rented it twice. So there's the other situation, Debbie and Ray, is that we had drains that we had to clear with this, and so we rented it for 3 days. And then we had another situation where we had some boulders and other stuff that we had to, you know, fix and clean on a drain. And so between the two rentals, you know, we spent around $6,000 or $7,000 just renting it for those 3 or 4 days. So if we don't purchase one, it doesn't mean we don't need this type of equipment. We still need this equipment. We just now have to rent the equipment and that. So it ends up being very costly to rent, you know.
Mhm.
And it does have, Dave, in answer to your question, it has other duties. Like we said, we can sweep up mud and dirt and debris after, you know, a rainstorm. We can grind off striping if we were going to take striping off prior to a slurry seal project. We could, instead of paying somebody else to remove the striping, we could do it in-house. It can do the backhoe part for the drains. I mean, it's 4 or 5 pieces of equipment all built in one. You know?
But before you rented this, I'm assuming this is a new idea, because we haven't used this piece of equipment until recently. How were these projects done? They were like contracted out to the tree company, right? Obviously, it's not the tree company.
If they were done, yes. I mean, the choices were, first off, if we didn't have the equipment, they didn't necessarily do some of the work. And then if they did do the work, yes, it was all contracted out.
So the work that you guys did in the drains a few months ago and rented this piece of equipment, or in the drainage course, I guess you wouldn't be in the culvert itself, but you guys decided to do these jobs. Would that have been contracted out previously, or would they have used some other equipment? Do we have equipment they would have used?
No, we had no equipment that they could use. That would have had to been contracted out if they did do it, but it got skipped a lot of years because they didn't have the money or didn't choose to contract it out. So a lot of that work that we did was a lot of the, what I call the backlog work. That was, some of it was, as you know, was behind private fences where we couldn't gain access to it without the owner, giving us access through their gates and stuff like that. So it was very difficult to get some of those locations. But when we finally were able to get through to that, we were able to organize them all in the same week, rent that equipment, and then go in there and clean that out. But that was work probably that got skipped more often than it got done, But when it did get done, it had to be done by a contractor.
Okay.
One other question, with the price of whether used or new, plus the attachments, does training come along with that?
I don't know, I can check, but our workers are actually trained on how to use this. They in their previous life prior to Duluth, they used this quite a bit in the construction industry. So we have that expertise in-house.
Okay, good.
Well, that's just Dustin, right?
Right.
Okay, and then
Well,
you
that's
trained
50% of the
Pedro?
crew. Huh?
You trained Pedro?
And he can train Pedro, yeah.
Okay, good.
So we'll be looking at that in the coming months. So you'll see this again. But we just thought we'd introduce it to you, so.
Sure, good. Any questions for you, Ray?
Nope.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve.
Okay.
I do have an answer to your question at the last meeting about financing of Buena Vista. So Teresa's back, and so I asked her about how we would fund Buena Vista.
Okay,
And as of right now, their funds are in Zone 1. For their roadway rehab account, they have 582,000. But they also have, and this is what I was talking about, the roadway rehab emergency fund, which is really like a reserve that they set up years ago, and each zone has money in it,
okay,
and that's 432,000. So adding those two numbers together, the total cash available is $1,014,000. And so when we get into Dave's presentation, you might want to ask him what he estimates the cost to be. And my guess is there's probably adequate in the roadway rehab zone. That would drop to low number. And then they would still have, for any contingencies that came up, 432,000.
very good.
Dave, I'm ready for your presentation whenever you are.
You ready, Dave?
Sure, why not?
Okay.
Now, basically, all I've done different than what we talked about last week is I added some after pictures. Why don't you go to the second to the last one? Because you've seen all these. That one. Okay, we'll start right there. So here I'm showing you what the roadway looks like from driving on the roadway.
Mhm.
And you can see down there's a big slope you'll see that goes on down. There's and the concrete, you'll see just on the right and also on the left, a little white thing. It's like a curb line. And that's so that water doesn't drain down the face of the slope. Takes it to a down gutter, the white line you see on there on the right, all the
Mhm.
way down to the bottom so it can go through the pipes. So it just kind of shows you from a top view. You're not going to see the pipes from the top view and all that kind of stuff. But with the thing filled in, you're going to get a road back again. Okay, go to the next slide. This is looking straight down, and so you can see the new asphalt is where the big gap where it all washed out. The dashed lines are the new pipes that are going in.
Mhm.
You'll see a white line at the end of the pipes. There's a concrete head wall that holds them in place and prevents any water from percolating around the pipes. And then you'll see downstream and upstream of that, you'll see a little gray thing. Those are rocks in there to help slow the water down so you don't get any erosion when the pipes come out or going in. And that depth there is about 30, 35 feet in areas down.
Wow.
So that slope, it's a 2-to-1 slope. That's 2 feet horizontal, 1 vertical. So it goes out 60 to 70 feet out. That's why you see a big slope in there to get down to the bottom because it's so deep. But that's, it was like that way before, but that's in there. So this is just kind of a visual so you can see where your $670,000 is the estimate that would go into this thing to fix the roadway so it's usable again. So as Jim said, he's going to ask how much money I have in this will cost, and it's just under the $700,000 mark. And that includes engineering, CM, all the environmental and everything else is part of it. So it's a total price tag. And not sure what else, Jim, you wanted me to go through. I thought, I'm going to do pretty much the same presentation as before, but I'll add those slides at the end and kind of go through that. Did you want me to run through also the other options, just so the board can see we looked at all three, or just say this one is what was recommended by the engineering committee?
That's up to, I'm assuming Debbie, you're going to be making the presentation
Well,
with Dave, right?
you indicated that I should do an intro, and what I was going to cover in the intro is that we were considering 3 options. I wasn't going to go into any detail because I could see that Dave had it in his presentation in terms of the handout. So I just thought I was going to be doing a introduction that we've been meeting over the last 3 months, considering 3 options. And when everything is said and done, frankly, the dollar figures are relatively close to one another. But what we heavily took into consideration was the safety and liability factor. And even though many of these projects here have been in place for a number of years, this one has been since 2016. And so from there, based on our conversation at our last meeting, then I was going to turn it over to Dave, just to go more in depth.
Okay.
I'm not sure how much information we want to reiterate, Jim, in terms of Dave's presentation, because I know they've been seeing the data in terms of their board packages. So I don't know if we wanted to lightly touch on that. Option 1, 2, option 3, and here's the recommendation by the committee, and then he can go into those details.
Well, what about if when it comes to Buena Vista on the agenda,
Mhm.
Mary Ann will, and I'll talk to Mary Ann, so.
Sure.
Mary Ann calls on Dave. And then Dave, maybe when you get started, why don't you say that I've been asked to present the recommendation of the engineering committee, and
Mhm.
perhaps Chairman Roberts would like to make a statement about that or
Yeah,
something like
an
that.
introduction or something.
And
Yeah,
then give it over to Debbie, and you can talk a little bit about the three options.
Yeah.
Okay,
And so you study those and determine that Buena Vista makes the most sense to the committee. And Dave will make the presentation of what the project is or
mhm.
something. And then hand it back, Dave, then you do your slideshow, Dave.
yeah.
And
And,
then if
say
it's a
that-
policy question that comes up, refer it to Debbie.
Okay,
Should we be spending this kind of money? Okay, really, that's not Dave's
Nope.
Yeah,
issue.
right.
So then at that point, you just defer to Debbie to answer why the committee thinks it is or whatever.
Mhm.
And then she can answer that. So I'm thinking you're gonna have to do it kind of side by side,
Mhm.
Yeah.
depending on the question or comment.
Sure.
that's fine. And I can just briefly talk about the other two options, just, like 30 seconds each, and then say,
Yeah.
okay, this is the one that was picked, and here's the project. So,
Right.
And then you show the project from beginning to end, because now you've
Right.
got the conceptual end projects, what it's gonna look like.
Mhm.
right.
And
Get my visual.
and then the conclusion would be, okay, it's now on the table for the board.
Right.
Does the board wish to proceed with this as the 2021 project at approximately 700,000?
Mhm.
All right. Mhm.
Sounds good to me.
How about you, Ray? What do you think? Yeah. Okay. Okay, very good.
So yeah.
So
that's-
anything more to add, Dave? That's gonna be it, right? The presentation. we just
That'll be
saw.
it for me.
Okay.
Yeah, because like I said before, they have been looking at some of the data. It's in this package as well. I will make the assumption that the board does take a look at its contents in anticipation of the meeting. So, yeah, so likely so, a few seconds here on the other two options and so on, and then just get right into the third one. I mean, to the final one.
Okay,
So, yeah, I think that sounds good.
all right. I'd be glad to do that.
Okay.
I think also it kind of ties to engineering. There were some comments made, a lot of comments made at the last board meeting about all kinds of things. But part of it was, we're not doing anything around here, any road projects. And so I asked, we actually have a list of the roadway rehab projects we've done since 1980. And year by year, it's always been consistent that they spend about 500 to 700,000 every summer on what roadway rehab. It looks to me some of the confusion might be that they tended to break the projects up into smaller projects, like 100 to 200,000 in different locations at different times with different contractors. But that's pretty consistent when in the last 3 years, the first year when I came, because we had Buena Vista and Sandia Creek, the engineering committee and the board did not do a project in 18. That's the money basically that's going into Buena Vista, because they were waiting on FEMA to see if they were going to fund them. And it was probably a wise decision, because FEMA turned them both down. And that's why we're doing Buena Vista with our own money now.
Right.
they've had FEMA projects over the years at all time. In various, every 2 or 3 years, there's been FEMA projects. But there have never been FEMA projects of the magnitude of what was done last year. Because last year is a little over 3 million. And they've never done a $3 million project. And I think one of the things that's causing the confusion is, and we've done 2 slurry seals during that time, and I don't believe they've ever done $400,000 or $500,000 slurries, and we've done 2. They were all more like $250,000, and they did it multiple times. So I think some of the confusion is that the person doing the complaining's been here 15 years. The way they used to do it is different, looks different than today. They did all these small projects. So the assumption is that there's all these projects going, but the district only gets a finite, it's the same amount of money. It's not 1.9 million every year. The taxes are frozen. It's the same, all right? So they were spending exactly the same amount of money over the years that we're spending today. One time there was a buy, and that was in 2018. And that savings is what's going in now.
Okay.
This is the biggest FEMA job they've ever done. And now all the bills are coming in for the FEMA job, which are being put into the account for FEMA to pay us back. So when these well, yeah, that's because you just did a $3.2 million project. And all the engineering and inspection and all that is coming in. So anyway, I'm not sure Mary Ann wants some kind of report. I'm still working on that. But essentially that's what it's leading to. And since the comments were engineering related, I thought I'd just mention it to you.
Yeah, and one thing about his comments were, he doesn't understand that drainage projects are roadway projects. The drainage is there to protect the roadway. So you have to protect your drainage to protect your road. I mean, it is a roadway project. And he didn't understand. That's because if we didn't have the roadway, we wouldn't need any drainage.
Drainage, right.
I mean,
Well, and they never did drain projects. Now that's an interesting comment.
That's how we got in trouble.
They never did them because when I came, they didn't know what drains they owned. I mean, they knew where they were in the field, but we didn't know we had 867 drains.
Wow,
or whatever.
that's a huge number.
That only came to light in about 2018. I had Harvey and Keith, the engineer at the time, and Keith mapped them and identified what they were. So the term roadway, I think in the past really did not really include the drains.
Yeah, but it does. It's part of it.
Yeah.
And so you actually, in the last 3 years, have spent more money than they ever did on roadways, just that a big chunk was part of the drainage.
Right. Where in the past they only did pavement.
Right.
Primarily.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So Jim, so at the end, of course, we're going to ask if anybody has any questions or need. I was just going to suggest that our clarification. And so it seems as though you're putting all that historical information together. So you will be prepared to if the question comes up again, be prepared to answer it.
Yes.
Yeah. And if the question doesn't come up, I don't think we need to, unless you feel like you need to put a little closure on that from the previous meetings.
Actually, I just didn't say anything in that, but I think Mary Ann, I'll speak to her tomorrow.
Okay.
She felt like there should be some answer for that. So.
Okay, well, it sounds pretty straightforward to me.
Yeah.
In terms of what you've gathered, and then the last comment in terms of Dave. So, so I'm fine either way. If nobody asks that question, I have no problem in terms of, you got all that history there So it'd be a nice closure on it.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, so.
Okay, good. So you're gonna wear your tap shoes on Wednesday, Dave?
Sure, absolutely. Oh,
Bring
I
the
have to
cane
wear,
and the hat.
I mean, do I have to wear shoes at all? I mean, you can't tell.
Well, we certainly would get a chuckle out of that.
I don't sing and I don't dance, so,
Oh, darn. I bet you can.
I bet Steve, well, he can sing and dance, but not me.
Tall guys don't dance.
No.
Yeah.
And we're engineers also, which automatically.
Engineers don't dance.
Oh, wait a minute. And my entire career in the defense industry, I worked with nothing but men. I worked in hardcore manufacturing sweatshops. And let me tell you, those engineers, they can dance and sing when they need to.
Yeah.
Wow.
Especially with a little booze, probably.
Yeah, it usually happens around the Christmas party time, but
Right, yeah.
Yeah. It
At
was
2
more than a little.
At 2 a.m., everybody can dance.
Yeah, there
that's
you go.
true. Yeah, that's true.
okay, very
That's the
good.
only time they started drinking.
Yeah.
There you go. Just don't
But
ask me what's in
nowadays-
my tumbler on Wednesday then, okay?
Yeah. But nowadays there's too many cameras around with your phones
Yeah.
and
That's
video.
true.
In the
That's
old days,
true.
you could make a fool of yourself and no one could see you.
Yeah, there you go. That's very true.
Not anymore.
Well, hey, that's why I don't do Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, none of that stuff.
Yeah. Hey, stay away from that.
Oh, yeah, definitely that. Okay, good. Well, we got a plan. Anything else, Jim, we need to cover?
No, I think we're ready to roll.
All righty. If I can just have a few minutes with you and I'll say goodbye to
Okay.
everybody else.
All
Appreciate
right.
it, you guys. Looking forward to
Dave?
Wednesday.
Dave,
Okay,
can I call
goodbye.
you? Can I
Yeah,
call you
give
real
me-
quick, Dave, on the
Yeah, give me a
phone?
call. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
See you guys
Thanks,
later.
Ray.
All right.
Oh, hold on here.